Ahmed Nader, and as usual, we will be discussing the latest headlines and the articles published in several newspapers and magazines from Egypt and the world. And today I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Councillor Mustafa Ahmadi, the Senior Media Specialist. Councillor Mustafa, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Ahmed.
If we start straight away from the Russian airliner crash in Sinai last week, we will be speaking about the head of the committee investigating the Russian plane crash, pilot Ayman Al-Muqaddim, who held a press conference to announce the latest regarding the ongoing investigations into the crash and the evidence that the investigation team has gathered so far. Of course, we saw this conference on Saturday. What are the updates that you can provide us with today, Mr. Mustafa?
Well, before giving you the updates, I'd like to give a message to the foreign media and the Egyptian media in consequence. First, the foreign media claimed many things that have nothing to do with facts.
Yes.
Actually, the full data of the black boxes haven't been released yet. And yesterday, the spokesperson of the aviation ministry said, we are in the process of collecting information. So, there is no prejudice, no speculations, there are no wrong calculations. The international media followed in such a forensic campaign against Egypt, and this is baseless. You cannot claim, you cannot bring any kind of analyst to say something which is actually based on no correct or factual information. First, information must be made clear, and then you can reach any kind of conclusions you like. But taking decisions like Britain did, and then we heard the US president claiming this is a bomb based on what he called intelligence information, and this is completely wrong. If they had intelligence information, why didn't they exchange it with the Egyptian bodies?
Or the Russian.
Or the Russian counterparts at least. But these are what I call wrong conclusions, and it is based on nothing. I'm calling on the foreign media and the Egyptian media never to take for granted any kind of information published there. We heard the scandal of the Independent, for example, when they plagiarized something published by the BBC, and they claimed that someone taken bribe at Sharm el-Sheikh airport. Later on, the BBC correspondent himself said that it was a photo for someone taking fees, not bribes. Some Egyptian media followed suit, and they take the news for granted, and they published it, and they're making a story. It is time to publish facts and make sure that we stick to facts. Facts so far haven't been released, so nobody, no country has the right to claim what is the causes and the reasons of the Russian jet crash. Until facts are made public, everybody has the right to make any conclusions. But before that, this is prejudice, this is speculation, this is wrong analysis, and we mustn't follow suit at all. We mustn't follow the international media, what they say, what they claim. The Daily Mail said the scandal also of the pilot who avoided a missile. This is not illogic.
In Sinai in the month of August.
This is not only illogic, but this is really ridiculous. How come this could happen? And why didn't they reveal this at the time? That is why I'm calling on the media to make sure that they stick to facts and they publish facts before they make any conclusions.
Yes, after speaking about the Russian airliner crash here in Sinai a couple of weeks ago, we'll be turning to another governorate, which is Alexandria, and President Abdel Fattah Sisi's visit to Alexandria, and Behera turning to Al-Ahram online with the main headline saying, President Abdel Fattah Sisi visits Alexandria following heavy rains. President Abdel Fattah Sisi made a surprise visit to Alexandria on Sunday to check on the efforts to tackle the sewage crisis following heavy rainfall that devastated the country's second largest city. The official Facebook page of the president announced that Sisi will allocate £1 billion from the Tahya Misr, or the Long Live Egypt Fund, for the development of the sewage system in the city. During the visit, Sisi also ordered the compensation for farmers whose lands have been flooded. Heavy rains in recent weeks have caused that major street flooding in Alexandria and other northern cities, killing a number of people. It had also led to the resignation of the Alexandria governor Hani al-Misiri. In early October, al-Misiri had reportedly argued that the city had not undergone any infrastructure development projects for 15 years. Mr. Mustafa, how would you comment on President Abdel Fattah Sisi's visit to Alexandria and of course the compensation that we had seen given to the farmers and the families of the people killed.
That is a very commendable step taken by the president. But alongside with this step, there must be a real infrastructure development in the second largest city in Egypt. It is not acceptable that you find the second largest city in Egypt get around and we are not through the full rainy season. I'd like to take the words of the ex-governor of Alexandria when he said the city hasn't undergone any kind of infrastructure projects in the last 15 years.
Yes.
This is really disastrous.
So it has nothing to do with the revolution in 2011, not in 2013.
Yep.
It was before that.
This is a fact, and this is really disastrous. Poor infrastructure in the second largest city in Egypt cannot just be forgiven like that. Yep,
Yes.
the president took a step, and yet he allocated £1 billion, as you said, from the Long Live Egypt Fund to help upgrade the sewage systems in Alexandria, and he also gave an ultimatum of 10 days under the direct supervision of the armed forces, and this is all commendable. But at the same time, this must be handled hand in hand by the development of the infrastructure of the city so that this disaster does not take place again. We've seen people losing lives. We've seen people losing their houses. We've seen even demolishing of houses in Alexandria and in Beira and others. That is why, and even in Cairo, in Cairo here, all efforts must be combined so that infrastructure are really upgraded. Municipality has to play their roles in the process, because actually, as I'm telling you before, when you come to the administration, the president is the executive officer. But below the president, there are people who should take the responsibilities.
Yes, how do you see the reaction of the government in such a crisis?
They've taken some steps, but I'm not sure actually if those steps combine with really tackling the very cause of the problem. I'm saying that the infrastructure, whether in Alexandria or in Cairo even, need maintenance, more advanced infrastructure projects. This is urgent. This is not a time actually to waste time at all. This is urgent. I know this is not the legacy of the current regime or the president. Poor infrastructure are inherited from the Mubarak regime, but at the same time, we should not stop at the past all the time. We should deal with the present and the future, and this is a must. The second largest city being drowned because of some rains. This is really.
Should it only be done and undertaken in Alexandria, or
no? I'm taking Alexandria
in other
because
cities and governorates of Egypt?
Because torrential rains hit hard in Alexandria and Beira. But at the same time, when it comes to Cairo, Alexandria, and such major cities, I'm not saying we need some kind of revolution for two things: upgraded infrastructure, and at the same time, municipality should assume their role effectively and powerfully. It is not the time at all for carelessness and such kind of negligence we have seen in the last couple of days.
Do you think there will be an improvement in such services after the election of a new House of Representatives and Parliament here in Egypt?
It is a must. It is a must, actually. There is no way. This is a huge nation, and this is the third largest populated country in Africa. And this is a country that cannot just be in a mess because of some rains.
Yes, exactly. Turning to Africa, as Mr. Mustafa said, to the Egypt Independent, construction of the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam moving faster than the dam talks, according to the minister. The Minister of Irrigation, Hussein Mughazi, said that the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is going ahead at a faster pace than the talks on the dam between Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan. The irrigation ministers and the tripartite national committee set up a look at the dam, are meeting to continue attempts to resolve the conflicts between the foreign consultancy firms conducting studies related to the dam. In September, Dutch consultancy firm Del Tares withdrew from the assessment of the dam, saying that the conditions imposed by the National Committee did not provide sufficient guarantees to the company that an independent high-quality study could be carried out. Mr. Mustafa, how would you comment on Minister of Irrigation Hussein Mughazi's comments or statements that the construction of the dam is moving faster than the negotiations between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan?
As if the minister is being surprised with the news. They made it clear right from day one. The Renaissance Dam will not stop even for a fraction of a second. Let me tell you more. I was there in Addis Ababa when this was made clear. An advisor to the Prime Minister himself said it in one of the major newspapers. Even God himself cannot stop the Renaissance Dam. Let's make things clear. Ethiopia goes ahead with the building and construction, and at the same time they are giving us negotiations and talks. We've been in a vicious circle of talks and negotiations for nothing. Unless negotiations lead to permanent solution, this is a waste of time. If it is Ethiopia's right to develop and use the Nile water equitably as they claim, it is also Egypt's right to maintain uninterrupted flow of the river. This is, as I said before, the fate of a nation. 90 million people depend on the only source, on the only freshwater source, which is the Nile. Ethiopia has more than 20 freshwater resources, other than rains, that actually heavily flow on the Ethiopian territories per year. If you'd like to develop, this is your right, but this mustn't be done at the expense of Egypt and Egyptians. We have, again, I'm stating, we have a historic right to the Nile waters, and this historical rights should not be risked at all by any means.
So it would be negatively affecting the Egyptian Nile watershed?
I'm not a technical expert to say that, but what I'm saying from what's going on the ground, you say that you will not harm Egypt's share of water. First, they do not acknowledge that Egypt has a share of water, and they do not acknowledge the 1959 agreements between Egypt and Sudan. And we've made it clear, the president made it clear to Ethiopians that if you'd like to develop, would give a helping hand. It is your right to develop, but not at the expense of Egypt and Egyptians. What I'm saying now is a waste of time. Negotiations lead to nothing. Whether the French Bureau or the Dutch Bureau or whatsoever, these have nothing to do with the advancement of the construction of the Renaissance Dam.
So what are the measures that Egypt should be taking to be protecting the Nile watershed?
I think we have to say directly to the Ethiopians, this is a waste of time, and we cannot just go and remain in a vicious circle of negotiations and talks for the sake of nothing. If you are really serious about not harming Egyptians, you have to take measures on the ground to assure Egyptians and Egypt that our historical rights to the river Nile water are not harmed, or there will not be any kind of damage inflicted on our share of the Nile water. Other than this, I'm saying this is a waste of time. We've stretched our hands to the Ethiopians before. The president took unprecedented steps. He went to Ethiopia, went to Addis Ababa, and he addressed the Ethiopian parliament, and his clear. We are not against Ethiopia's development. But at the same time, you cannot be harming us and claiming that the Renaissance Dam will not harm the Arab Stream nations, and at the same time, everything's taken on the ground proves that there will be even a kind of a minimal harm. Let me tell you what this word has been all the time, significant harm or proportionate harm. This is playing with words, but actually you have to make sure that no kind of harm, significant, proportionate, whatsoever harm, can be inflicted. This is our only source of fresh water, and we do not have any kind of other source. You cannot play with us when it comes to the river Nile. I'm telling the Ethiopians, we understand that your need to develop, to generate power and electricity, but this mustn't in any way inflict any kind of harm on Egypt and Egyptians.
Yes, turning from Egypt and Africa to the Daily Star and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Palestinian man killed after car attack wounds 3 settlers. A Palestinian man was killed by Israeli fire after ramming 3 Israeli settlers with a car in the occupied West Bank city of Nablus on Sunday. These settlers were wounded from both the Israeli forces' fire and the car attack and were taken to the hospital for treatment. The Israeli forces closed the Hawara checkpoint south of Nablus and Za'atara following the attack and prevented the Palestinians from passing through. Mr. Mustafa, it seems that we have seen and we are still seeing the same violence and the same attacks from the Israeli side and sometimes from the Palestinian side on the Israeli settlers. How do you see an end to this conflict and this violence?
Let me tell you first, there is no peace. This has been halted since the outbreak of the Arab Spring revolutions, and Israel has been taking advantage of the chaos spread everywhere in the Arab world. Arabs are now busy with their own stuff. Saudi with the problems of Yemen and the Houthis, Egypt that has to end the problems internally, regionally, and internationally. Other Arab countries, some countries were not party to the Palestinian cause. Other countries are playing such a negative role in the Palestinian cause. And this is how we can find the Palestinian cause torn apart between Hamas, which so far refuses to have a coalition government or even to acknowledge the government which is in the West Bank, and this kind of Palestinian difference are helping the Israelis do more than this. Israel will never take any step serious forward as long as the Arabs are not a unified force. I'm calling again on the Arabs. If the Palestinian cause is only Egyptian, or if the Palestinian cause is only Palestinian, they have to make sure that they say this publicly. This is our responsibility. All the Arab countries, all the 22 Arab nations undertake responsibility to have a permanent to the Palestinian cause. Egypt alone can do nothing alone. This is a combined effort by all the Arab peoples, by all the Arab nations.
Yes.
The role of the Arab League must be more effective in this. You have to disclose those countries playing what I'd like to call a hidden agenda, and at the same time making facts clear. We exert efforts, but at the same time this is not enough, as you do not have all the cards of the game in your hand. Such incidents are likely to be escalated. I do not see any kind of foreseeable agreement in the near future, because as I'm telling you, Israel is talking about peace, but at the same time, everything that's been doing on the ground is violence, war, hate. And at the very end, I see no hope in peace process between Arabs and Israelis. That's because of the Israeli actions that reject peace, and they do not listen. They give a deaf ears to any kind of solutions. Given the Palestinian their lands, I wonder even that the so-called terminology of a two-state solution. What kind of a two-state? Israel is already a state existence since 1948 by force, not by means of any kind of legal right to these lands. Israel was established by force on the Arab. Again, I'm just making sure this is the Arab land and this is the Palestinian land, and Israel has never, they have never presence on those lands. So we accepted the fact that Israel is a nation in that region in the world. But Israel does not accept any kind of neighbors. They claim that we do not want a Palestinian state because it will pose danger to Israel. What kind of danger do you think a Palestinian state can pose to Israel? This is another vicious circle, and this is another waste of time. But Arabs are not caring too much about the Palestinian cause. They speak lots about it, but when it comes to actions, it is very minimal, and it is very below the expectations.
Yes, and this is regarding the Arab and the Egyptian maybe response to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But
let me tell you something.
What about the international response?
Egypt is doing its utmost,
yes,
given the circumstances when it comes to the Palestinian. No Arab country sacrificed lots for the Palestinian cause as Egypt did. Yes, because we need a united Arab front, yes, a powerful Arab front, and we are capable of doing so. But we do not want to be indulged more in the Palestinian, to be involved more in the Palestinian case.
Yes, on the other hand, the international and the official response from the United Nations, the United States and Europe are supporting Israel.
And what kind of international support or action are you expecting? The States are pro-Israel. Britain is pro-Israel. Others are pro-Israel. So never expect any kind of support or sympathy. If the Arabs themselves actually do not care too much about their cause, do you expect others to do?
Yes, exactly. That is a very good point. And finally, from the Gulf today, we read the Gulf states and the BRICS should do more for the Syrian refugees, according to the United States. A senior American official said that the Gulf Arab states, such as Saudi Arabia and Qatar, as well as the so-called BRICS emerging market nations, should be doing more to help the Syrian refugees. Quickly, Mr. Mustafa, how would you see the American response to the Syrian crisis and the Syrian refugees crisis in Europe?
Didn't you see that video on YouTube when the American President Barack Obama said that we've been given training to IS forces in Iraq? What do you expect from America to help Syria after that? I'm just laughing when I heard the Qatar is playing a role when it comes to the Syrian refugee. It is better that Qatar stops funding Islamist insurgents and terrorists in Syria, and everything will be okay. Qatar stop dreaming of replacing the Russian gas exports to Europe by replacing it with the Qatari gas exports to Europe via would-be future Syria after Al-Assad phase or post-Al-Assad phase in Syria. If Qatar wanted to help really, they have to stop funding terrorist organizations, and this is not a secret. It has been there all the time. Syrian refugees problem, this is a problem of the whole Arab world. We've seen very tragic scenes of people going to Hungary and going to other Eastern European nations just to live in peace and security. This is tragedy, and the whole Arab world takes part in this tragedy. That's it.
What about the future of Syria, or without Bashar al-Assad?
My main concern is a divided Syria to stay, not a kind of a cantonized state, as they want it to be, but actually we've been standing hard. I'm talking about Egypt. We've been standing hard against any kind of a cantonized Syria. We said that the president made it clear even recently with the BBC. My concern is not al-Assad stays or al-Assad goes. My main concern is Syria to stay as undivided state, as it used to be.
So what about Syria with the Russian intervention now?
This is helping too much to exterminate extremists, and I think the Syrian army is gaining ground with battling the insurgents and terrorists. But this is a good step.
The Russian intervention actually gained some benefits for the Syrians and not the Americans, which have been battling.
Recently, America just wanted to show.
4 or 5 months.
Recently, the states wanted to show that it is against also IS. That is why they said that we are sending commandos unit to Syria to fight IS. The problem is that this is like a game of powers, a conflict of powers, and it's taking place again on the Arab lands. This is our main problems. Such Arab powers that play part in escalating the Syrian problem and worsening it must take part in ending and having an end to this. We are capable of doing this. Egypt does its best to do this. But at the same time, again, you are just like someone being singing alone.
Yes, Councillor Mustafa Ahmadi, the Senior Media Specialist, thank you very much for being with us
Thank
today.
you, Ahmed. Thank you very much. Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
And this brings us to the end of the World Today for Sunday. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.